I watched my son's face turn white when I handed him the letter. 10 million, his voice cracked. Someone offered you $10 million? My daughter grabbed it from his hands, read it, looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. When were you going to tell us? I didn't answer, because 3 weeks ago when I tried to tell them they called my home a liability. Called me a burden. Told me I needed to be managed. So instead I sold the house, took the money, and I tested them. I told them I had nowhere to go, that I needed help, just a place to stay for a few days. My son said no, my daughter said no. But someone said yes. Someone who had nothing gave me everything. Someone who worked double shifts and slept on a broken futon and could barely afford food. Someone they never expected. And now sitting in my new home that cost over $1 million cash, watching my children realize exactly what they lost, I have no regrets. Because the person who helped me? They're about to inherit everything. My name is Evelyn, I'm 74 years old. And this is the story of how I learned the difference between children and family. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe to Never Too Old channel. We're creating a community of incredible people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now, back to the story. The letter sat on my kitchen table for 3 days before I could bring myself to truly believe what it said. Cream-colored paper. Thick and expensive. The kind that announces itself as important before you even read the words. I'd opened it on a Tuesday afternoon standing at the counter where Harold used to read the morning paper. And the number had made my coffee cup freeze halfway to my lips. $10 million. All cash. 30-day close. For my house. This modest 3-bedroom on Sycamore Lane with the peeling paint Mark complained about and the overgrown yard Chloe found so embarrassing. I read it 3 times, certain I was missing a decimal point. But there it was, typed in that same expensive confidence. Cascade Development Corporation was offering $10 million for my property. The letter explained with careful precision. My house sat on a corner lot, something Harold and I had liked because it gave us more garden space, at the intersection of Sycamore and the main access road. The city had quietly rezoned our sleepy neighborhood for a massive technology campus, Cascade Innovation Center. Phase 1 required 53 parcels, and mine was the last one they needed to break ground. All my neighbors had already sold. I was the final holdout, though I hadn't known I was holding anything out. The letter included a printed map showing the planned development. My property was marked with a red star. Critical access point, the notation read. Without it, their construction trucks couldn't reach the main site. Without it, the entire $450 million project faced costly delays. Each week of postponement, the letter noted, cost the developers approximately $2 million in lost financing and rescheduled subcontractors. Paying me $10 million to avoid those delays was apparently the smart business decision. I'd even Googled it while the coffee grew cold. Found 3 news articles about the Cascade Innovation Center, a technology hub bringing hundreds of jobs to our area. Estimated completion in 18 months. Local officials praising the economic development. Not one article mentioned which properties were involved. That information was being kept quiet until all acquisitions were complete. For the first time since Harold died 5 years ago, I felt something other than the gray sameness of my days. I felt excited. I felt hopeful. I felt like maybe the universe was handing me a second chance at something. I wanted to share this with my children. Tuesday afternoon, 2:47. I remember checking the kitchen clock because I wanted to call them at a reasonable hour. Not too early, not during dinner. A time when they could actually pay attention to something wonderful. I set my laptop on the kitchen table, propped on 3 encyclopedias Harold had insisted we keep, even after the internet made them obsolete. The screen wobbled slightly when I opened it. I'd never quite mastered the setup, but eventually I got the camera angle right. I was wearing my good cardigan, the blue one Chloe had given me last Christmas. I'd even put on lipstick, though they'd probably never notice through the grainy video. The developer's letter sat just out of frame. I kept touching it like a talisman, like proof that what I was about to tell them was real. Harold's mug sat beside me, dark green ceramic chipped at the handle, a Father's Day gift from years ago when the kids still bought gifts instead of sending cards. The chip caught on my finger when I lifted it, a familiar little snag that felt like muscle memory. Through the kitchen window I could see Harold's lemon tree. It needed pruning. The fruit was growing wild, pulling the branches down toward the ground. Harold would have tended to it by now, but I'd been putting it off. Everything felt like too much effort these days. Until this letter arrived. I'd practiced my opening line 3 times. I have the most incredible news. Simple, direct. The kind of thing that would make them lean forward and smile. I dialed Mark first, then added Chloe to the call. It took a moment for their faces to appear on my screen. Mark looked impatient already, sitting in what appeared to be his home office. I could see framed certificates on the wall behind him. Awards from his company. His tie was loosened at the collar. Chloe appeared a second later, phone in hand, clearly doing something else while the call connected. I could see movement in her background. Probably that book club she was always hosting. Mom? Mark's voice had that edge. The one he used when he'd already decided something was taking too long. We were just talking about you. I leaned forward about to speak, but Chloe cut in. The house, Mom, we need to talk about the house. My hand stilled on the letter. That peeling paint. Mark continued, his tone flat and matter-of-fact. It makes the place look like a liability. You've really got to do something about it. It's dragging down the whole neighborhood's property values. Liability. The word hit me like a slap. And the yard, Chloe added, wrinkling her nose at her screen. Honestly, Mom, it's a mess. The whole aesthetic is just depressing. I looked down at the letter in my lap. $10 million for this liability. $10 million for this depressing aesthetic. My mouth opened but no words came out. We've been discussing this, Mark said, leaning closer to his camera. That house is way too much for you to handle at your age. You need to be realistic about your limitations. Limitations? My fingers tightened on Harold's mug. The chip on the handle pressed into my thumb. Chloe shifted her phone. And Mom, about Alex. You need to stop sending him money. He needs to learn to support himself. I never had you bankrolling my 20s. Alex. My grandson. Chloe's son. The one person who still called just to ask how I was doing. Who remembered Harold's lemon tree and asked if it was producing fruit this year. Mark and I did it on our own, Chloe continued. Her voice carrying that particular tone of false modesty. We learned responsibility. Alex needs to do the same. The room tilted slightly. Or maybe I did. I was about to tell them I'd just been offered $10 million for this house they found so worthless. I was about to share the most exciting news I'd had in years. And instead they were telling me I was a liability who needed to be managed. The word echoed in my head. Liability. Liability. And suddenly I wasn't in my kitchen anymore. I was somewhere else. Somewhere 20 years ago. The bank. Cold marble under my feet. A withdrawal slip crumpling between my fingers. $25,000. 15 years of saving gone in 15 seconds. The teller's voice sounds distant. Professional. And how would you like this, Mrs. Carter? Cashier's check, I hear myself say. Mark doesn't notice. He's already on his phone, texting the real estate agent about his down payment. His first house. His future. Built on my past. He never asks where the money came from. Never pays it back. Never mentions it again. 20 years later, he calls my house a liability. The memory shifted. A different building. Dusty and small. The consignment shop smells like old paper and regret. Harold's mother's locket sits in my palm. Gold, antique, the only thing of value she left me. The weight of it feels like a goodbye. The shop owner examines it through her glasses. I can give you $800. It's worth 3 times that. But I need the money by Friday. Chloe's wedding dress. The one she can't possibly live without. The one that costs $3,200. I sold family history to buy my daughter's perfect day. And now she's telling me my yard is depressing. The third memory hit hardest. Our kitchen table, 8 years ago. Home equity loan papers spread across the wood like a diagnosis. $40,000 to cover Mark's startup debts. To save him from bankruptcy. Harold's hand squeezes my shoulder. We both know what we're risking. The house we've owned free and clear for decades. The security we've built. All of it, now collateral for our son's failed business. I'll pay you back, Mark promises, his voice earnest, as soon as things turn around. It took 11 years to pay off that loan. Harold died 2 years before I made the final payment. Mark never mentioned it again. Mom, are you even listening? Mark's voice pulled me back to the present. Both of them were staring at me through their screens. Identical expressions of impatience. My hand rested on the letter. $10 million. Yes, I said, I'm listening. So you agree? Chloe asked. You'll get the yard cleaned up? Maybe hire someone to paint? And really, Mom? Mark leaned closer. Have you thought about downsizing? That house is too much for you to manage alone. Alone. Another word that cut. The lemon tree swayed outside my window. Harold had planted it the summer before he died. Something that'll outlast us, he'd said, patting the soil around its roots. I looked at my children through the grainy video connection. These people I'd raised, these people I'd sacrificed for, these people who now looked at me and saw a problem to be solved. I called to tell you something, I said. Can it wait? Chloe glanced at something off-screen. I have my book club starting in 15 minutes. It's just, I started. Look, Mom, Mark interrupted. We're trying to help you here. You can't just ignore these problems forever. Something cold and clear formed in my chest. A thought. A realization. A decision. I looked at the letter one more time, then at my children's faces on the screen, then at Harold's chipped mug. I need to go, I said quietly. Think about what we said, Mark ordered more than asked. About the house. I nodded. Smiled the way you smile when you're too tired to argue. And ended the call. The kitchen was suddenly silent. Just me and Harold's mug and the letter worth $10 million that my children would never know about. Not yet. First, I needed to find out who they really were. I walked to Harold's desk in the study and pulled out a legal pad. At the top I wrote 3 words. The test. Below it. Gas leak. Condemned house. Nowhere to go. Simple. Direct. Immediate need. Not about money, about shelter, about safety, about whether my children would be there when I needed them. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in Harold's desk drawer. The one with the lock. The one only I had the key to. Tomorrow I would call the developer and accept their offer. Quietly, carefully, with no one knowing until I was ready. But tonight I would plan my test. Peter Alvarez's office smelled like leather and old paper. The kind of place that took itself seriously. I'd known Peter for 30 years, since he handled Harold's business incorporation back when we still thought Mark might take over the company someday. His secretary showed me in at 9:15 Monday morning. Peter stood when I entered, his face showing concern. I probably looked as tired as I felt. 2 days of planning this test hadn't left much room for sleep. Evelyn, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his mahogany desk. Is everything all right? I placed the developer's letter on the polished wood between us. He picked it up, read it once, then again, then looked at me with eyebrows raised. 10 million. I want to accept, I said, quietly. Quietly. No one can know, not until I'm ready. Peter studied me for a long moment. He'd seen me through Harold's death 5 years ago. Through the refinancing of that home equity loan Mark never knew I took out for him. The one that took me 11 years to pay off. Peter was good at reading between lines, and he was even better at not asking unnecessary questions. How quiet? He finally asked. Invisible. He nodded once, set the letter down, pulled a legal pad from his drawer. We'll set up a trust to receive the funds. Something neutral. Sycamore Holdings, perhaps. He wrote as he spoke. Papers signed here, not at your home. Money transferred electronically. I'll handle the closing with the developer's representatives directly. How long before it's public record? 7 days after closing. That's standard for property transfers in this county. 7 days. A week to complete my test and make my decisions before the world knew I was a millionaire. Let's do it, I said. The signing took 2 hours, page after page of documents, each one requiring my signature, my initials, my acknowledgement that I understood what I was selling and for how much. My hand shook on some of the pages. Not from fear, from the weight of what I was doing. I kept touching Harold's wedding ring. I wore it on a chain around my neck, hidden under my blouse. The metal was warm against my skin, warmed by my own body heat. I pressed it through the fabric whenever my hand needed something to hold onto. The developer's representative arrived at 11:30. A woman in a gray suit, professional and efficient. She placed a cashier's check on Peter's desk. $10 million, reduced to a slip of paper. We'll begin clearing the site within the next 2 weeks, she said. Her tone professional. You'll want to remove any personal belongings before then. I nodded, signed the final paper, handed over my keys. The keys Harold and I had used for 42 years. The ones that opened the door to the home where we'd raised our children. Celebrated anniversaries, mourned losses, built a life. The woman tucked them into her briefcase and left. Peter deposited the check into the trust account. Gave me a black folder containing copies of everything. Shook my hand at the door. "Call me if you need anything," he said. "Anything at all." I drove home, to the house that wasn't mine anymore. The neighborhood looked the same. Mrs. Brown watering her roses next door, though her house had already been sold too. The Johnsons' dog barking from their backyard, though they'd moved out last month. Everything looked normal, but nothing was. I walked through the empty rooms one more time, stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the living room, where Harold and I had marked the kids' heights on the frame, little pencil lines with dates. Mark, age 7, Chloe, age 5. The developer would paint over those or tear the whole thing down. I sat in Harold's chair by the window. The one where he'd read the newspaper every morning for 30 years. The lemon tree swayed outside, heavy with fruit. He'd planted it the summer before he died. "Something that'll outlast us," he'd said. It would outlast the house too. I didn't cry until I was back in my car, sitting in the driveway looking at the home I'd just sold. Then the tears came, hot and fast, for everything that was ending and everything that was about to begin. Wednesday evening, 2 days after the sale closed. I sat at Harold's desk with a legal pad and a pen. The gas company had come that morning for a legitimate inspection. Found nothing wrong, as I knew they would, but they'd given me paperwork. Official forms on company letterhead stating they'd performed the inspection. That paperwork sat beside me now. I wrote out my script, word by word. Practiced it 3 times out loud, listening to my own voice, adjusting the tone. I needed to sound scared but not hysterical. Desperate but not manipulative. Just a 74-year-old woman who needed help from her children. Just a mother who wanted to know if her children would be there when it mattered. My phone sat on the desk, dark and silent. I picked it up, put it down, picked it up again. In my contacts, Mark, Chloe, Alex. I would call Mark first. He was the oldest, the one who liked to be in control, who needed to feel like he was handling things. If I called Chloe first, she'd just tell me to ask Mark anyway. My finger hovered over his name. Thursday morning, 10:30. I pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, 4. "Mom," Mark's voice carried that edge of impatience, the same tone from our video call. "I'm in the middle of something." I took a breath. Let my voice shake just a little. It wasn't hard. The fear was real. Even if the gas leak wasn't. "Mark, I need your help." The words came out exactly as I'd practiced. "There's been a terrible gas leak. The inspector was here yesterday. He says the whole system needs to be replaced, and the house isn't safe. He's condemned it until repairs are done." Silence on the other end. Not the concerned silence of someone worried about their mother. The annoyed silence of someone calculating how this would affect them. "A gas leak? Are you kidding me?" Not "are you okay?" Not "where are you now?" Just annoyance. "Mark, I'm not kidding. The house is condemned. I can't stay here. I need somewhere to go, just until the repairs are finished." "Mom, this is exactly what I was talking about." His voice rose slightly. "That house is falling apart. This is what happens when you don't maintain things properly. This is what happens when you ignore problems." I closed my eyes, counted to 3. "I need somewhere to stay, just for a few days while they fix it." "Absolutely not." The words hit like a door slamming. "Laura and I are in the middle of refinancing. We're pulling equity out for a new SUV. The Toyota dealership has the exact model we want. But the financing depends on our debt-to-income ratio being perfect. Having you here would completely mess up the application. They'd want to know who else is living in the house. It would change everything." A new SUV. They were refinancing their house for a new SUV. And that was more important than giving me a place to sleep. "It's just for a few days," I said again. "I wouldn't be in the way." "The timing is terrible, Mom. We close on the loan Friday. I can't have anything disrupting this." "Mark, I have nowhere else to go. There are extended stay motels. Use one of those, but I cannot have this disrupting my finances right now. I have to go." The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone against my ear, listening to silence. Harold's photograph smiled at me from the corner of the desk. Taken at the beach 10 years ago, before the cancer. Before everything changed. My hand trembled. 1 down. 1 to go. Thursday afternoon. 2:15. I dialed Chloe. She answered immediately, which was unusual. She almost never picked up on the first ring. Mom? She answered. Chloe, something's happened. I used the same script, the same trembling voice. The gas leak, the condemnation, the need for somewhere to stay. I heard her sigh. That particular sigh, the one I'd been hearing since she was a teenager. The one that meant I was about to become an inconvenience. Oh, Mother. You're always such a burden. Burden. The word she'd used on the video call. The word that cut deeper than she knew. My book club is meeting here all week. Tuesday through Friday we're doing a whole series on mindful living. The guest room is my meditation space now. I just had it feng shuied. Everything is perfectly balanced. The energy would be completely wrong with you there. Chloe, I have nowhere else to go. What about a senior home? They have respite programs for exactly these situations. You could stay there temporarily and they'd have medical staff on site if something happened. That makes way more sense than imposing on family. As if family was supposed to be an imposition. I'm not ready for a senior home. Well then, I could almost hear her thinking, trying to find a solution that didn't involve her. What about Alex? My heart stopped. Alex. He has that apartment, that little studio place. He's young, he can handle having you there for a few days. You want your son to give up his space for me when you won't? I didn't say that. Her voice turned defensive. I'm just suggesting options. You can't expect me to disrupt my entire wellness routine because of your housing emergency. Have you considered that maybe this is the universe telling you it's time to downsize? Time to simplify your life? Look, Mom, I have to go. My yoga instructor just arrived. We're working on some really important breathing techniques. Just figure something out. You're resourceful. You always figure things out. She hung up. I sat in the kitchen that wasn't really mine anymore. The afternoon light came through the window, making patterns on the floor. The same light that had come through this window every afternoon for 42 years. The word burden sat in my chest like a stone. I wasn't crying, I was angry. Both tests complete. Both children failed. Evening came, the kitchen grew dark. I didn't turn on the lights. I'd made lists on the legal pad. Crossed them out. Made new ones. Looked up extended stay hotels online. Researched senior respite programs. All performance. All part of processing what I already knew. My children would not be there when I needed them. Alex's number glowed on my phone screen. He was struggling. I knew that even though he never complained, worked double shifts at some restaurant downtown, lived in a studio apartment he could barely afford, sent me photos of his paintings. Beautiful work that deserved to be in galleries, not stacked in a cramped apartment. I didn't want to call him, didn't want to burden him with this, didn't want to test him the way I'd tested his mother and uncle. But I had no one else. And part of me, a part I was almost ashamed to acknowledge, needed to know. Needed to know if there was one good person left in this family. One person who understood what family was supposed to mean. The test wasn't over yet. One more call to make. I pressed Alex's name. The phone rang. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, 4. Then noise erupted through the speaker, clattering dishes, shouting voices, the chaos of a restaurant kitchen in full swing. Someone yelling order up over the sound of a fryer sizzling and pans hitting metal surfaces. Grandma? Alex's voice was breathless, surprised. Hold on, it's really loud in here. I could hear him moving, the kitchen noise growing louder then suddenly muffled. A door opening, closing. The sound changed to something echoey and cold. Sorry, I'm in the walk-in cooler now, it's the only quiet place. He was slightly out of breath. Is everything okay? And suddenly I couldn't do it. Couldn't deliver the practice script I'd used with Mark and Chloe. My voice broke when I spoke. Alex, something's happened with the house. There's a gas leak. It's been condemned. Mark and Chloe can't take me in. I stopped. Swallowed. I needed to hear your voice. Where are you right now? Home. Well, not home anymore. I'm not supposed to stay here, but I don't know where else to go. Stay right there. His voice turned fierce. Protective in a way my own children's had never been. I'm coming to get you. Alex, you're at work. You can't just leave in the middle of your shift. I'm leaving right now. Give me 40 minutes. You don't have to do this. Grandma, he stopped me with that one word. You're not spending tonight alone figuring this out. I'm coming. The line clicked off. I sat in the dark kitchen, phone still pressed against my ear, and cried. Not the angry tears from earlier, not the sad tears from selling the house. These were different. These were tears of relief and shame, and something else I couldn't quite name. Relief that someone cared. Shame that I'd lied to him. And gratitude, raw and overwhelming, that I wasn't completely alone. Headlights swept across the kitchen wall. I stood at the window and watched an old Honda Civic pull into the driveway. The left headlight was noticeably dimmer than the right, giving the car a lopsided look. Alex unfolded himself from the driver's seat. 22 years old, tall and lanky the way Harold had been at that age. He was wearing his restaurant uniform. Black pants and a white shirt stained with what looked like tomato sauce and cooking grease. A backpack hung from one shoulder. I opened the door before he could knock. Grandma. He wrapped me in a hug that smelled like dish soap and cooking oil. And beneath that, something else. Something that felt like safety. His arms were strong despite how thin he looked. I felt his chin rest on top of my head. I'm so sorry this happened, he said into my hair. You came all the way across town. You left work. He pulled back, studying my face with concern. Have you eaten? I shook my head. Okay, first we eat, then we pack your things. You're staying with me. Alex, your apartment is too small. I can't impose on you like that. It's bigger than a gas leak house. His smile was gentle, but his tone was firm. Come on, let's get you out of here. While I packed an overnight bag in the bedroom, Alex made sandwiches in the kitchen. I could hear him moving around, opening the refrigerator, finding the bread Harold had bought last week. The normalcy of those sounds, someone taking care of me, made my throat tight. We ate at the kitchen table. The same table where I'd planned this test, where I'd written out my script and practiced my lies. Harold's lemon tree was visible through the window, a dark silhouette against the evening sky. Alex asked about the repairs. How long would they take? Did I know how much it would cost? Had the inspector given me an estimate? I kept my answers vague. They're not sure yet. Maybe a week, maybe longer. The guilt sat heavy in my chest. But I couldn't tell him. Not yet. Not until I understood what this all meant. He didn't push, just listened and nodded and ate his sandwich, occasionally glancing at me to make sure I was eating too. Ready? He asked when we'd finished. I nodded. He carried my bag to his car, held the passenger door open for me like Harold used to do, started the engine and adjusted the heat because the evening had turned cold. As we pulled out of the driveway, I looked back at the house one more time. The house I'd raised my children in. The house Harold had died in. The house that belonged to someone else now. The house that had taught me exactly who my family was. Thursday night, 10:16. Alex's apartment was even smaller than I'd imagined. A studio. One room functioning as bedroom, living room and kitchen all combined. A bathroom off to the side, barely large enough to turn around in. The whole space couldn't have been more than 400 square feet. But it was painfully clean. The kind of clean that spoke to pride in the face of poverty. Everything had its place. Dishes stacked neatly in the small drying rack. Clothes folded in milk crates that served as a dresser. Books arranged on a makeshift shelf made from boards and bricks. And the walls. Every available surface was covered with art. Sketches, paintings, drawings, landscapes that captured light in ways that made me catch my breath. Portraits with eyes that seemed to follow you. Abstract pieces in colors that shouldn't work together but somehow did. The cramped apartment had been turned into a gallery. Alex set my bag down by the door and immediately started stripping his bed. The only bed in the apartment. A double mattress on a simple frame against the far wall. What are you doing? I asked. Changing the sheets. He pulled pillowcases off, tossed them into a laundry basket. You take the bed, I'll sleep on the futon. I looked at the futon, lumpy and threadbare, pushed against the opposite wall beneath a window. It looked like something rescued from a curb on trash day. Absolutely not. Alex, this is your home, I'll take the futon. He stopped what he was doing, stood there holding a fresh pillowcase, looked at me with Harold's eyes. The same brown eyes that had looked at me across the breakfast table for 37 years. The same eyes that had seen me through joy and grief and everything in between. Grandma, you take the bed, please. His voice was quiet but firm. You are not a burden, you are my family, and family takes care of each other. You are not a burden. The words I'd needed to hear. The words my own children couldn't say. I sat on the edge of his bed, the only bed he had, and watched my 22-year-old grandson make me comfortable in his too small apartment. He brought me water in his only nice glass. A real glass, not plastic. Offered me his warmest blanket, the one that looked hand-knitted. Set up his laptop on the small desk so I could watch something if I couldn't sleep. I need to shower, he said, grabbing clean clothes from one of the milk crate drawers. I smell like the fryer. Will you be okay for a few minutes? I'll be fine. After the bathroom door closed and I heard water running through the pipes, I looked around the apartment. Really looked. The kitchenette consisted of a hot plate on a counter and a mini refrigerator that hummed loudly. I opened it without thinking, then immediately felt guilty for snooping. But what I saw made my chest ache. Milk, eggs, a container of leftover rice, 2 apples, condiments in the door. That was it. A stack of art supplies sat on the desk. Brushes in a jar, tubes of paint, some squeezed nearly flat. Canvas boards leaned against the wall. Everything worn from use but carefully maintained. His shoes sat by the door. 1 pair of work shoes, the black non-slip kind restaurant workers wear. 1 pair of sneakers with soles held together by super glue. The repair obvious and careful. On the desk, partially hidden under a notebook, I saw papers. A budget spreadsheet. Rent $847. Food $200. Art supplies $150. Utilities $100. Phone $50. Tuition payment $300. Every dollar accounted for. Nothing left over. Pinned to the wall above the desk was a letter. I stood up to read it without touching it. An acceptance letter to a summer program at some prestigious art school. We are pleased to offer you. The date was from last year. He'd been accepted but probably couldn't afford to go. Below that, a photograph. Alex and a woman I recognized as Chloe. Though it must have been taken years ago. They were both smiling, before whatever had happened between them happened. The shower turned off. I sat back down on the bed. Alex's bed. The bed he was giving up for me. In this apartment he could barely afford, with food he didn't have enough of. Working double shifts to pay for an education his mother thought was a waste. He gave me everything he had. And my children, with their big houses and new SUVs and meditation spaces and refinancing plans, had given me nothing. The test was over. I had my answer. Alex emerged from the bathroom in clean clothes, his hair still damp. He sat on the futon and I could tell immediately it was as uncomfortable as it looked. The springs creaked. He shifted, trying to find a position that didn't hurt. "Are you sure you don't want the bed?" I asked. "That looks awful." "I'm fine, I've slept on worse," he smiled. "Do you need anything else? More water? Another blanket?" "I'm fine, thank you, Alex, for everything." "Of course." We sat in silence for a moment. The only sounds were the humming refrigerator and traffic from the street below. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Anything." "How are things, really, with school, with work, with everything?" He leaned back against the wall, considering his answer. "It's good. Tough sometimes, but good. My painting professor thinks I have real potential. There's a student gallery show next month and he wants me to submit 3 pieces. That's wonderful." Yeah, his face lit up when he talked about his art. The exhaustion disappeared for a moment. "I've been working on this series about family. What it means, what it should mean versus what it actually means. It's been... and work. It's fine, the money's decent and my manager's pretty understanding when I need to switch shifts for classes. I'm covering a double tomorrow. Someone called in sick." I noticed the exhaustion in his face that he was trying to hide, the dark circles under his eyes, the way he rubbed his shoulder like it hurt. "What about your mother?" I asked carefully. "Do you two talk?" His face closed slightly. Not angry, just resigned. "Mom and I don't really talk much anymore." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. She made her choices, I made mine." He shrugged. "She wanted me to study business, said art school was impractical. That I needed to think about my future, my earning potential. We had a pretty big fight about it. My senior year of high school, I applied to art school anyway, got in. She said if I went, I was on my own financially." "She cut you off?" "She didn't cut me off exactly, she just stopped helping. Stopped calling, stopped acting like she approved of anything I was doing." He looked at the photograph on the wall. "That picture's from before, when she still thought she could convince me to be someone I'm not." I didn't know it was that bad between you. She doesn't like people who don't fit into her plans. Everything has to be curated. Perfect. Instagram ready. He said it simply without bitterness. Just stating a fact. I'm not perfect. My life's messy, my apartment's tiny. I work in a restaurant and come home smelling like grease. That doesn't fit her aesthetic. The word aesthetic echoed. The same word Chloe had used to describe my yard. You know what's funny? Alex continued. She used to tell me when I was a kid that you were overbearing, that you were always trying to control her life. But now I wonder if maybe you were just trying to help and she couldn't see the difference. My throat tightened. I was trying to help, I said quietly. I know, he smiled at me. And you're not overbearing. You're one of the few people in this family who actually listens when I talk, who asks about my paintings, who remembers things I tell you. We talked for another hour, about his classes, his dreams of having his own gallery someday, his plans for the future. He told me about a painting he was working on, a portrait series of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Like what? I asked. Like a grandmother who sends her struggling grandson $20 when she probably can't afford it herself. He looked at me knowingly. I know you've been helping me, Grandma, the money that shows up sometimes. I know Mom didn't send it. You needed it, and you needed it too, but you sent it anyway. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. That's the kind of thing I'm trying to capture. The quiet heroism of people who give when they have nothing to give. I had to look away. The guilt of lying to him about the gas leak, about my situation pressed against my chest like a weight. Finally, close to midnight, Alex said he needed to sleep. He had to be at the restaurant by 6 in the morning for the breakfast shift. He settled onto the futon, and I could hear every spring protest beneath him. He shifted a few times, trying to find a comfortable position, then went still. Within minutes, I heard his breathing even out. Sleep claimed him immediately, the sleep of the exhausted. I lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, at the sketches taped above me, practice drawings he'd probably done late at night, at the shadows moving across the walls from the streetlight outside. My grandson, who had nothing, had given me everything. My children, who had everything, had given me nothing. Tomorrow I would tell him the truth, about the house, about the money, about the test. Tomorrow I would make this right. I pressed Harold's wedding ring against my chest through my nightgown. I hope I'm doing the right thing, I whispered to him, to the darkness, to myself. Outside the city hummed. Inside, my grandson slept on his terrible futon. And in my chest, a decision solidified into something concrete and real. I knew exactly what I needed to do. Friday morning. Before 6. I woke to the sound of Alex moving quietly through the apartment. Trying not to disturb me, I kept my eyes mostly closed, watched him through my lashes as he got ready for his double shift. He checked on me once before leaving, pulled the blanket up over my shoulders. Then he was gone. A note sat on the desk. Help yourself to anything. Back by 2, you're safe here. 4 words that meant everything. You're safe here. I made coffee on his hot plate, sat at his desk and looked at his budget spreadsheet again. Every dollar accounted for. Nothing left over. A life lived on the edge of survival while his mother worried about the feng shui of her meditation space. I picked up my phone and called Peter. I need to set up a trust fund, I said when he answered. $500,000 for my grandson Alex, managed by you until he's 25. Are you sure about this, Evelyn? I've never been more sure of anything. We talked logistics, property searches, timelines. He said he'd start the paperwork immediately, call a real estate agent he trusted. When are you going to tell him? Peter asked. Today. When he gets home from work. After I hung up, I looked around Alex's apartment, at his paintings, at the life he'd built from nothing, at the portrait on the wall I'd missed last night, an elderly woman with strength in her face. It took me a moment to realize it was me. Painted from memory. He'd captured something I didn't know I still had. I spent the morning cooking, used what little he had in the kitchen, then walked to the corner store with cash from my purse. Bought real groceries. Chicken, vegetables, rice, bread. The things you need to make a proper meal. The apartment filled with smells I hadn't created in months. Roasted chicken and herbs. The smell of someone caring enough to cook. 2:30. The door opened. Alex stopped in the doorway, staring. Grandma? What is this? The table was set with his mismatched plates. Food waited, still warm. You gave me your bed, I said. Let me give you a meal. His face did something complicated. Gratitude mixed with embarrassment mixed with something deeper. We ate. He told me about his shift. The difficult customers, the broken fryer, the manager who appreciated him staying. I watched him eat and realized how hungry he really was. How long it had probably been since he'd had a proper meal. After dinner we cleaned up together. He tried to do it alone but I wouldn't let him. Then I said, Alex, I need to tell you something important. His face changed, concerned. We sat on the futon. I took a breath. There was no gas leak. Silence. What? There was no gas leak. I lied to you. I lied to Mark and Chloe too. The words came out in a rush. 5 days ago I got a letter from a developer. They offered me $10 million for the house. $10 million. For the house Mark called a liability and Chloe said was depressing. Alex sat very still. I was going to tell them. I called them on video to share the news. But before I could say anything, they spent the whole call telling me how worthless the house was. How I needed to consider assisted living, how I was becoming a burden. I looked at my hands, so I decided to test them. Test them. I sold the house, took the $10 million. Then I made up the gas leak story to see if they'd help me when I needed them. My voice cracked. Mark said no because having me stay would interfere with his SUV financing. Chloe said no because of her book club and her meditation space. She actually suggested I should stay with you instead of her. Alex's jaw tightened. I called you last because I didn't want to burden you. But I had nowhere else to go. And you? I met his eyes. You left work. You gave me your bed. You treated me like family when my own children couldn't be bothered. The silence stretched between us. You tested them, he said finally, and they failed. Yes. But I didn't know I was being tested. No. You just knew I needed help. And that was enough. He stood, paced the small space, ran his hands through his hair. I can't believe my mother did that. His voice was tight with anger. Not at me, at her. I knew she was self-centered. But telling you to stay with me when she wouldn't help you herself. When she knows I can barely afford this place. Don't apologize for them. What are you going to do now, with the money, with them? I've already started. I told him about the call to Peter. The trust fund. $500,000. His face went pale. Grandma, no, that's too much, I can't accept that. You already accepted me when I had nothing to offer. This isn't payment, this is investment, in someone who deserves it. I explained the rest. The property search. A duplex or 2 homes near each other. One for me, one for him. In his name, full ownership. Studio space for his art. The ability to focus on school without working himself to exhaustion. I don't know what to say. Say you'll let me do this. Say you'll let me invest in your future the way you invested in my dignity. He was crying, trying not to, but failing. What about Mark and Chloe? I'm calling a family meeting, Wednesday. They'll find out everything then. They're going to lose their minds. Probably. I stood, faced him. But they made their choices. I'm making mine. My will is being changed. Everything goes to you. The trust, the property, all of it. Alex pulled me into a hug, held on tight like I was the only solid thing in his world. Thank you, he whispered, for seeing me, for trusting me. Thank you, I whispered back, for reminding me what family is supposed to be. We stayed like that for a long time, in his tiny apartment that smelled like home cooking and possibility. While somewhere across town my children had no idea their world was about to change. And I felt no guilt about it. None at all. Just peace. The weekend disappeared in a blur of activity. Peter's real estate agent showed us properties, duplexes, townhomes, houses side by side. Alex came along still processing everything, occasionally touching walls like he couldn't believe they were real. We found it Monday afternoon, a duplex on Pelican Drive. 2 identical units with separate entrances and a shared courtyard. The backyard had an old garage with north-facing windows, perfect light for painting. This is too much, Alex kept saying. It's not enough, I kept answering. We made an offer. Cash. Accepted within the hour. By Tuesday, papers were signed at Peter's office. Alex's unit was deeded in his name only. True ownership. Mine in my name. Both came furnished. The garage was already being converted into a proper studio. Easels, supplies, professional lighting. Alex cried when he saw it. Tuesday evening, I sat in my new living room, mostly empty still. Harold's desk by the window. His photograph watching over me. In the courtyard, I'd planted a cutting from his lemon tree. I picked up my phone, texted Mark and Chloe, family meeting, Wednesday, 3 p.m., my new address, 847 Pelican Drive. Mark responded immediately. New address? What's going on? Chloe, is this about the house repairs? Did you find someone to help? I didn't respond to either. Just Wednesday, 3 p.m., don't be late. I set the phone down and looked at Harold's photo. Wish me luck, I whispered. Wednesday, 2:45. I dressed carefully, my good clothes, Harold's wedding ring visible on its chain. The living room was arranged with 2 chairs facing the couch where I'd sit. Peter's folder sat on the coffee table. With documentation, trust papers, the Cascade letter on top. Alex was in his unit. Nervous. Do you want me there? He'd asked earlier. Not yet. Let me talk to them first. But stay close. Now I heard cars pulling up. Through the window, I watched Mark's Audi and Chloe's white Mercedes park in the driveway. They stood there, staring at the duplex, confusion on their faces. Exchanged words I couldn't hear. I took a breath, opened the door before they could knock. Mom? Mark looked past me into the house. What is this place? Come in. They entered. I watched their reactions carefully. Mark's eyes scanned everything. High ceilings, hardwood floors, large windows, expensive furniture. He was assessing value. I could see it in his face. Chloe walked to the window. Mom, this is beautiful. Really beautiful. The natural light, the finishes. This must be costing you a fortune in rent. Mark nodded. Honestly, this is way nicer than I expected. Senior housing has really improved. Is this one of those luxury communities? They were impressed. Even envious. They had no idea. Sit down. They sat on the couch. I remained standing. What's going on? Mark's impatience returning. Your text was cryptic. Did you get the house repaired? Is this temporary? There was no gas leak. Silence. What? Chloe's face went blank. There was no gas leak. The house was fine. I lied. Mark stood. You lied. Why would you lie about something like that? Sit down, Mark. Something in my voice made him obey. I picked up the Cascade letter, handed it to Mark. He read it. His face changed. Confusion to shock. 10 million. His voice cracked. Someone offered you $10 million for the house? Chloe grabbed the letter from him. Read it. Looked up at me with dawning horror. When were you going to tell us? I tried to tell you. Remember that video call? The one where you told me the house was a liability. Where you said it was depressing. Where you suggested I needed assisted living. Their faces shifted, remembering. I was going to share the news. I was excited. I sat down now. In control. Then you spent the entire call telling me how worthless everything was. How I was becoming a burden you needed to manage. Mom, we were trying to help, Mark said. We were concerned. Were you, or were you concerned about how it reflected on you? Silence. So I sold the house, took the 10 million. Then I tested you. Tested us. Chloe's voice was small. I called you, Mark. Told you about the gas leak, that I needed somewhere to stay. Do you remember what you said? His face paled. You said having me there would interfere with your SUV financing. You told me to stay in a motel. I turned to Chloe, and you called me a burden. Said your book club was more important than my safety. Then you told me I should stay with Alex, your son, the one who works double shifts to afford a studio apartment. I didn't mean it like that, Chloe whispered. Yes, you did. You meant exactly that. Mark tried to regain control. This isn't fair. You set us up. You created a situation to make us look bad. I created a situation where you could show basic human compassion. You both failed. So what? You brought us here to shame us. His voice rose. No. I brought you here to tell you the truth. I reached for the folder, pulled out documents. This duplex cost me $1.2 million. Cash. I own both units. Their eyes widened. I could see them calculating. Still have $8 million left. My attorney has established a trust fund worth $500,000, and I've purchased this property as a permanent residence. Mark leaned forward. Okay, so you're set. That's good. But what about, He didn't finish, but the question was clear. What about us? The trust fund and this property are not for you. Confusion. They're for Alex. The explosion was immediate. Alex? Mark stood again. Your grandson gets $500,000 in property? Not my grandson, your nephew, Chloe's son. I looked at her, the one you abandoned because he chose art over business. The one you told me to impose on when you wouldn't help me. Chloe shook her head. Mom, you don't understand. Alex made his choices. Yes, he did. He chose to be kind. When I called him with the same story I told you, he left work immediately. Drove across town. Gave me his only bed. Shared food he couldn't afford to share. Because he knew you had money. Mark spat. He had no idea. None. He helped me because I needed help. That's the difference between you and him. I pulled out the will. My attorney has revised my will. My entire estate now goes to Alex. The remaining $8 million, this property, the trust fund. Everything. You can't do that. Mark's voice was loud now. I already did. Peter assures me it's airtight. I'm of sound mind. I have witnesses and I have documentation of 30 years of you taking from me and never giving back. Chloe was crying. Mom, please don't do this, we're your children. You're my children. But Alex is my family. There's a difference. I stood, walked to the door, opened it. This meeting is over. They didn't move at first, just stared. Get out of my house. Mark grabbed Chloe's arm, pulled her up. They walked to the door in shock. Mark stopped in the doorway. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret, I said quietly, is not seeing who you really were 30 years ago. I closed the door, locked it. Through the window I watched them stand in the driveway, arguing, gesturing. Mark's face red with anger. Chloe's makeup running. They got in their cars, drove away. The silence was complete. I walked to the courtyard door. Opened it. Alex was standing there, had clearly been listening. It's done, I said. He pulled me into a hug. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the weight lift. 3 months later, New Year's Day. Alex and I stood in the courtyard watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. The lemon tree cutting I'd taken from Harold's tree had taken root. Small but growing. Through the garage windows I could see his studio, canvases in progress. The life he was building. Mom called again, he said quietly. Did you answer? No. Did you? No. Mark had tried to contest the will. Peter shut it down within a week. The calls had stopped after that. Chloe still left voicemails. I didn't listen to them. I start full-time next week, Alex said, changing the subject. I know, how does it feel? Strange, good strange, he smiled. A local gallery had asked to see his work. His professor thought he had real potential. Everything was changing. We stood together in the fading light. Peaceful. Mornings now had a rhythm. I made coffee. Alex was already in his studio by the time I woke, working on his portrait series. He called it Shelter. One painting showed an elderly woman standing by a window, strength in her tired face. Another showed a young man sleeping on a lumpy futon having given away his bed. These are for the gallery show, he'd explained. I'd started a foundation in Harold's name, helping seniors with emergency home repairs. People in the position I'd pretended to be in. Peter helped me identify cases. It gave the money purpose beyond just sitting in an account. Evenings, Alex and I cooked together, shared meals, talked about our days, his classes, my foundation work. The duplex felt like home in a way Sycamore Lane hadn't for years. I drove by the old house once. The whole block was gone now. Construction equipment, concrete, the skeleton of the Cascade Innovation Center rising from the ground. I felt nothing. It was just a building. The memories were what mattered. Those I kept. Through Alex I heard things. Mark and Laura were fighting, money problems. They'd been counting on an inheritance that never came. Chloe's wellness center plans had fallen through. She'd needed my investment to make it work. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles, no joy in their pain. Just peace. And certainty that I'd made the right choice. Spring came, 6 months after the confrontation. Alex's gallery opening was tonight. He stood in front of the mirror, nervous, fumbling with his tie. Let me, I said, fixing it the way Harold had taught me. What if no one comes? He asked. Someone will come, I'll come. He laughed, hugged me. The the gallery was small but beautiful. His paintings displayed on white walls, shelter prominent in the center. People arrived, his professor classmates, strangers who'd seen the advertisement. They admired his work, called him talented, promising. The gallery owner talked about future shows. I stood back watching Alex shine. 6 months ago I'd made a phone call that changed everything. Created a test that showed me exactly who my children were. Who my grandson was. Harold's voice in my head. You did good. Alex found me in the crowd, grinned, mouthed thank you. I nodded. Somewhere Mark and Chloe were living their lives, making their choices, living with their consequences. But here in this moment, I had everything I needed. Family that chose each other. Love that was earned, not expected. Peace that came from knowing my worth. So, that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. Was I too harsh cutting my children out of my will completely? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more stories like mine.